Okay, so when we're looking at this triangle, the pattern of information that's provided is two angles and the included side, right? So that's two angles and the side between them. Okay, so based on this, we can find all the remaining pieces of information using law of sines. So we can find the side opposite angle A, the side opposite angle C, and then we can find angle B. Okay, which of these pieces of information is going to be the easiest to solve? The missing angle, right? Okay, how can you find the missing angle? By triangle sum? Josh, how would you do it?
Add the two known angles together and then subtract it from 180.
Okay, so if you add these two angles together, what do you get?
66.
And when you subtract that from 180? Okay, so first step is easy. You just use triangle sum, find your missing angle, and you're 1/3 of the way done. Okay, now to find the missing sides, which would be the next step, you're going to use law of sines. I'll usually abbreviate it just L of S. And law of cosines is going to be what we'll talk about tomorrow. And I'll call that L of C just to abbreviate it. But you'll find the sides using the law of sines here. Okay, so let's say we begin with A. Okay, because A is our unknown, I'm going to start with that in the top of my fraction. I could have done sine of 22, but it's easiest just to start with your unknown. So A over the sine of the angle opposite it. This ratio is consistent with all sides and opposite angles in this triangle. So A over sine of 22 has to equal C over sine of 44 and 33.7 over the sine of 114. So which of those actually gives me numeric values to use for my ratio? Casey?
33.7 over the sine of 114.
Good. Okay. So here is the way to set up your proportion to solve for side A. The most common mistake for students in calculating law of sines is to forget the sign. They'll say A over 22 equals 33.7 over 114. That's not consistent. That's not going to give you the right answer. You have to have the signs written in there in order for those ratios to hold true. And then there's a couple ways that you can calculate this. One of the easiest ways as we begin to use our calculators a little bit more is there's a solve feature in your calculator that will perform all the calculations on this. Okay? And as we get through, as we start to go through the year, when we start the pre-cal prep stuff, you guys will be getting some self-paced homework that will, or worksheets that will guide you through using your calculators. Okay, so you will learn to use your TI-89s in a little more depth. Okay, but for right now, there is a solve feature. It's located under this algebra tab, F2. Solve, and all you need to do is enter the equation exactly as it appears. So here I'm just going to use A. I could have changed it to an X if I wanted to, but I'm going to say A divided by the sine of 22, close the parentheses, and that's equal to, the equal to symbol is right below the X on the far left of the keypads. And that's equal to 33.7 divided by the sine of 114. Close that off. Once I've entered my whole equation, I can then tell the calculator what I want it to solve for. And the way that you identify that is you use a comma and then tell it the variable you're solving for. So the comma is located right above the 9, and we want it to solve for A. So I hit the alpha key, the white button, and then the equal sign to get my A. Close off the parentheses, and now my answer is going to be in decimal point, which is what I want. And so I can hit enter, and I get the answer of 13.8 approximately. Now, is this consistent with what you would expect based on what the triangle's measurements are listed as? 22 is the smallest angle, so you would expect the side opposite it to be smaller than the largest side, right? 114 is the largest angle, so the longest side is 33.7. So 13.8 is consistent. It's quite a bit smaller than the 33.7. Okay, and so now when we solve for C, what are we expecting to be the case for C? What length should it be between? Somewhere between what? Can it be smaller than 13.8? Can it be larger than 33.7? Okay, so you expect that it should fall within that. Now, which of them is it probably going to be closer to? If you had to guess. Is 44 closer to 22 or closer to 114? Probably it's a little bit closer to 22. So this value C is probably going to be a little bit closer to 13.8 than it is to 33.7. Again, it's not a guarantee, but as far as the expectation goes, you can kind of assume that. So let's set up our ratio or our proportions to solve for C. We take our unknown C, so I'm going to start with that on the top of my fraction, over the sine of the angle opposite it, so sine of 44. And now I have two possible ratios that I could set this equal to. Either 13.8 over sine of 22 or 33.7 over the sine of 114. Which of those is going to be more accurate? Is 13.8 an accurate number? Now, the 13.8 one is the approximation, right? It's actually 13.81895. So this is an approximation, whereas 33.7 is an exact number. So just use the one that's as exact as you can possibly get. Now, if you use the exact number in your calculator, this whole thing here, as your A value, it would still give you the exact answer. Okay, but it's just easier to use the ratio already given. And it's also easier because when you actually calculate this, the only difference between these two equations is this 22 becomes a 44. Your calculator is already set up to calculate that, so all we need to do is keep the same line, change the 22 to a 44, hit enter, and we get our new answer, which in this case is 25.6 approximately. Okay, so when you look at this, again, the fact that it falls between 13.8 and 33.7 is the consistency you're looking for. Okay? As far as it falls closer to 33.7 than it did to 13.8, that's irrelevant. Again, it's not always going to be the case, but often gives you something to look for. And then finally, does the triangle inequality relationship apply here? Are the sum of the two smaller sides greater than the third side? Is 13.8 plus 25.6 greater than 33.7? Yeah. If it's not, then you've done something wrong. So you have some built-in checks to test whether you're on the right track or not. Okay, I encourage you to use those. Use any of the properties involving triangles that you know to help gauge whether your answers seem reasonable. Okay, let's